Okay, so on this slide, I want you guys to underline the CIA. And this is a continuation from the previous slide regarding the Cold War. If we are now going to be the police of the free world, we'll need an agency that can monitor and suppress radicals that are threatening an American way of life, capitalism, or if anything, continuing a situation where communism expands. So at the national level, we had an agency, or we have an agency that was created out of the Red Scare in the 1920s. With the establishment of the world's first socialist slash communist state in the United States, there was a worry that communism would find its way onto our homeland, and we needed an agency that could monitor the situation and deal with these type of radicals when they developed. The name of that agency was the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But that they have a scale and scope at the national level. The CIA will do exactly that, but at the international level. And so the CIA will set up situations or be involved in situations where they are trying to reduce the expansion of communism, and they'll find themselves in situations or predicaments that could be considered problematic, such as funding anti-communist regimes, even though they were undemocratic, as you guys can see right here. The idea that the United States would support a country or an individual who could be a dictator, probably was a dictator, a war criminal, or a government that's not even democratic, as long as they can stress that they are anti-communist, is kind of concerning, because it really demonstrates where exactly America's heart lies in reference to, are we more democratically concerned, or are we more capitalistic uh, uh, concerned when it comes to certain issues? And in these particular cases, it seems that capitalism will always trump democracy. Uh, you know, there were instances in which the CIA backed coup d'etats. The CIA would be involved in the overthrow of certain governments. The one that comes to mind for me was around 1953. Iran held democratic elections, and the guy who won happened to be a communist by the name of Mossadegh. Well, we can't have any communist uh, ruling Iran, so the United States, or I should say the CIA, will set up a situation where Mossadegh will be removed from power, and in his place, a U.S. pro-Western um, leader will be positioned, and this individual will not just as an individual, but the idea will transform much of Iran into a westernized society in the Middle East. And you can look back and you can Google like old pictures of Iran, um, and um, and how American it almost looked. They were wearing bell bottoms. They had their hair done like people from the 60s and the 70s, and but they were Iranian. They were Middle Eastern. Then in 19 or leading up to 1979, there's something known as the Iranian Revolution, in which the Ayatollah uh, by the name of Khomeini will lead a fundamental overthrow of Western influences, Western regimes in the state of Iran, and bring it back and put it in the hands of the Iranian people. This Iranian Revolution is a rejection of Western attitudes, Western ideas, and it's a call to return back to uh, what the Iranian people's culture and history had always been. When you look at many Middle Eastern concerns in today's text, you can see that They do not care for Western traditions, or some do, some don't. Some do. Some care, um, and they are being um, they are organizing themselves and holding sway, holding court over other individuals, and so there's a struggle that's taking place. Do we accept Western traditions such as capitalism, or be open to new ideas that run counter to the traditional beliefs of a people? And that leads to the old rank and file versus young Turks, who's ultimately going to prevail, and ultimate conflict ensues. That's why you see a great deal of conflict in the Middle East, especially when it comes to fundamental ideologies. And the CIA is smack dab in the middle of all of that. Sometimes we are on the right side. More often than not, we're on the right side. But there are instances in which mistakes are made, and we find ourselves in sticky situations. But nonetheless, you need to know that as an agency, uh, the CIA was created, the CIA was invented in order to enable the United States to be the police of the free world and reduce communism as much as possible. Please underline NATO. NATO stands for I'll type it out here. The North, oh, it's already typed. I don't even have to type it. Just go ahead and underline. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Now, this will be made up of the United States, Canada, and then 10 other Western European nations. And notice at the beginning it says in that same year. I believe they were formed right around the same year that the Soviet Union had successfully detonated a nuclear bomb. So now the United States is no longer the only one on the block with that weapon. Uh, Another major superpower, as a matter of fact, our prime adversary has access to a similar weapon. And so now we are in a situation where we can mutually reinforce the destruction of the world as we know, as we enter the possibility of World War III. This will be a nuclear possibility. So after we formed NATO, and again, NATO was pledged as a mutual defense organization and a mutual defense organization against a Soviet attack, which would probably be an atomic or a nuclear attack. Now, the Soviet Union will respond to NATO with something called the Warsaw Pact. This is a formal Eastern European alliance, and they will pledge a mutual defense against a NATO attack or a Western European or American attack that could be nuclear, because the United States has already demonstrated we have nuclear weapons and we will consider using those weapons. So when you look at NATO, when you look at the Warsaw Pact, you need to understand that these are alliances gearing up for a possible World War III. This war will be a nuclear war. Now, please underline Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong will be a communist revolutionary uh, leader during the Chinese Civil War that occurred shortly after uh, World War II. So after World War II, a civil war breaks out, and the people of China are concerned. Do we resort back to our ways of before, in which we exist, but by and large, we are under the protection and control of a capitalist economy. And the Open Door Notes affords this to happen under the leadership of the United States. When you look at a capitalistic system, there are definite winners and there are definite losers. In order for you to win, someone must lose. The idea of the Open Door Notes kind of established the game so that most of the Chinese people would never win. Sure, there would be some Chinese people here and there, 100,000 here or there, that would benefit from capitalism, but usually at the cost of putting the boot on the neck of the rest of the Chinese people. And that's ultimately how a capitalistic or hierarchical structure should operate. You have the 1% who's willing to uh, parcel out hundreds of thousands of dollars here, millions of dollars there, hundreds of $1,000s there to these individuals, but you only give it to individuals who you know would be able and willing to put their boot in the neck of the rest of society. That way you don't have to. All you got to do is make sure that they continue to have their 100,000, their million, their 2 million, and then those individuals will then do the dirty work, if you will, moving on down. In communist China, uh, well, before they even become communist, much of China operates in that fashion. They're tired of uh, Western countries because remember, the open door notes allowed the United States to be in control of economic enterprise in the United States, but they were also the gatekeepers, if you will, for other Western powers who would like to trade in the area. And of course, the United States would skim a great deal off the top. Again, the Chinese people probably benefited nothing from this exchange. So you have all these people in China who are experiencing capitalism but have never benefited from capitalism one bit. So if you are in this relationship and it's never benefiting you, you might want to get out of that relationship. And then, secondly, you might want to pursue other types of relationships. And that's exactly what Mao Zedong was um, championing for the Chinese people. Mao Zedong was championing a revolution of the people to give power back to the people. And it would be in the spirit of the Bolshevik Revolution that took place in Russia in 1917. So China will have a civil war. Mao Zedong will be the leader of that revolutionary civil war and ultimately establish China as a communist nation. So let's make that clear. China is now a communist nation under the leadership of Chairman Mao, also known as Chairman Mao, but his name is Mao Zedong. Um, and that's a big game changer because China is right next to the Soviet Union. These are two massive states or two massive nations, if you will. And it appears that wherever communism or whatever communism happens to touch, it turns communistic. If it's in slapping distance, it's going to get slapped. So when China becomes communistic, the United States is bothered by this because now they are losing economic control of an entity that they thought they had control over before. So they block China from the UN. Now, if you recall, the UN had a Security Council with 5 permanent members. And let me stress that permanent. It was the United States, Great Britain, Soviet Union, France, and China. Permanent. But now China happens to be communistic by way of its own people. Then they get kicked out of the UN. Who kicks them out, first off? Secondly, if you're permanent, how can you be kicked off? Oh, I see. You're only as permanent as much as we say you're permanent. Then you weren't permanent. You were never permanent. If it's always at the discretion of somebody else making that decision for you. Like, that ain't your room. It's only your room because I say it's your room. That ain't your bathroom. It's only your bathroom because I say it's your bathroom. Then you had no power or control at all from the jump. So I just want us to understand that dynamic, that if and when people can take things from you or remove a designation from you, you never had that control in the first place if other individuals are defining your position and state. So as far as China is concerned, they could care less. They will ultimately be under communistic rule for quite some time, and you can see China today still operating in a very controlling state. Um, However, they have found themselves in somewhat of a hybrid state when it comes to economics, but they are still operating under as a communistic regime, uh, and in many instances are an oppressive state to the people. At this time, go ahead and underline the Korean War. Now, everything that I was explaining to you guys about China, shortly after World War II, Um, Shortly after World War II,